sweet love, all we need now. So, this is the second part to the dialogue, the first part that I was speaking about earlier, about, you know, the manifestation in the world of love, and how we are, in my opinion, bringing through our subjective imprint into an interobjective sort of reality, we're bringing down love into the world. The expression of the fourth chakra, or the heart, perhaps. So, what I mean by this, let's reflect a little bit more on, you know, Socrates and what his expression of the highest life was, because I think it's one of the clearest examples of the third chakra, or truth. In it, you know, he's calling for the philosophers as, you know, expressions of the highest sort of life. And, you know, with the philosopher, you see an individual that's containing within themselves sort of all the expression of, you know, knowledge and grounding it. You know, it's essential in his view to distinguish between what it might be a soothsayer or a prophet and what a philosopher is, because a soothsayer, you know, might have accurate beliefs. You know, it might, you know, say, you know, anyway, it might have an accurate belief, but according to Socrates, it doesn't necessarily mean it's knowledge. So, what Socrates said, you know, was knowledge. It had to be grounded. And, you know, one way to interpret that is that by grounded he means sort of, you know, based on sort of a rational framework or something. You know, if A then B, if B then C, therefore if A then C. And so it's grounded and it's easier to recall. Whereas a soothsayer might have a state of inspiration and have something, a belief that's good and right, but it's not grounded. It's easily forgotten. And this is unlike a philosopher. And so, you know, that is what reason is, in a sense. That is objectivity. But when you get into interobjectivity, there's the requirement of groups to call up information. So it's decentralizing the knowledge. And we see this in things like the internet, right? Where it's sort of a swarm mind where we can tap into individuated parts of it, but we're not really getting the whole. It's just too big. And this has been the case ever since, you know, probably about the 15th century. There's just too much knowledge to really ever tap into, you know, essentially all of it for the individuated mind. And so, let's look at this Greek idea of eros and agape. And Wilbur talks about this a fair bit, where, you know, eros is the reaching up. It's, you know, an expression of, you know, the upper two quadrants, if you might say, like the subjectivity and the objectivity. There's this kind of transcendence element to that. And you highly see that in, you know, sort of the Platonic and Socrates dialogues, where it's, you know, escape of this body. This body is dirty. Desires are wrong. Sex is bad. These things are lower. They're base. They're about that interconnectivity, almost. Philosophy's expression of bringing down that which is higher, which is perfect, which is marvelous and astounding for the time in which Socrates lived, because it had to be brought down to manifest using our hands the kind of reality that we needed to express that objectivity. That is through these technologies that we see around us. That is, you know, the usage of the objective mind, and it had to be brought down by people like Socrates and Plato. But now we're at a time when we've exhausted the real need, at least at this point, to really use the objective mind as a move to transcend. And so we have to integrate, get back to agape, the movement to embrace. So where you might say that the last really history of man has been in a tendency to transcend, so since maybe the magical mind, which is really in my mind the highest of the emotional mind, which was an expression of good in sort of an animal form, we now are moving back to, in my opinion, an expression of embrace or agape. But now through the interobjective lens, we're using objectivity as a lens that's collectively gathering, expressed through individual beings, but now we have a center. And the center is not really an expression of all information, but it's we are no longer flat because we recognize the fact of sort of the roughness of perspectives, and that there's a spectrum of those perspectives in a sense, and that no perspective is really wrong, it's just a perspective. Oh yeah, that's getting a little bit far off topic though. So this movement is, as I say, back to more of an agape, more of an embrace, whereas the history of mankind has really been on one of transcendence, of becoming more. So this is deeper interconnectivity, and it goes in lots of ways kind of against what Socrates was saying about what it means to be human, because it's kind of moving in a sense beyond human. We're using our technologies to create swarm minds, I think. So that's I guess all I'll say on this. I'll probably do a third part here in a minute.